Hello everyone and welcome to our final pre-concert video for Holland Symphony's 2024-25 season. This concert will be, if you like romantic music, this concert is for you. All of the music on this concert was written within about a 30-year time span at the end of the 1800s and very beginning of the 1900s. It's all big and lush and romantic, and it's all packed with everything that everyone loves about romantic music. So this is going to be a really fun concert. I know the musicians are really looking forward to it, and we're all excited. It's a big play, as we sometimes say. Lots of notes to learn, but we're enjoying the process. This concert also features some music that is either what we might call nationalistic music, at least in the first half of the concert. So music that sort of borrows from or tries to embody ideas from a particular culture. And nothing really says that more than Finlandia, the first piece by Jean Sibelius. Jean Sibelius is definitely the best known composer from Finland, and was writing during a time when Russia was a threat. And so he wrote this piece. Wrote a lot of very nationalistic music to celebrate Finnish pride, sort of portraying the threat of the looming Russian forces right at their border. And this piece in particular has really become emblematic of Finnish pride, even for people living all across the world today. Sibelius is sort of known for writing very low rumbling, melancholy music. He uses a lot of timpani, the great big kettle drums. He really likes to call in the low brass, the low strings, and Finlandia definitely takes advantage of those colors. So it begins with sort of a snarling theme, defiant theme. There's something that sounds very much like a hymn, which Sibelius wrote, and it actually has been adopted as a hymn with a couple of different texts. It's well known to a lot of people. There are moments of it that are very peaceful. It's a well-known piece. Holland Symphony has played it several times, not for quite a long time. It's a piece that's often played by youth orchestras as well. It's something that I think instrumentalists get excited about playing. It can be loud, it's very melodic, there's some fast stuff. It's exciting to play. So, and that actually was the winner of our audience choice contest of sorts. We had this last fall. We had 5 pieces, and so a lot of you like it as well as the musicians. So we're excited to come together to play this piece. I think this piece had a pretty strong majority, or at least, if not a majority, then many more votes than the number 2 selection. So a lot of you are looking forward to hearing Finlandia, apparently. Johannes, Stu.
Yeah, so maybe I just jump in. So my first exposure to Finlandia was when I was an exchange student. I was in Georgia, and I sort of like subbed at this Methodist church, and I came across this hymn, "Be Still My Soul," in the Methodist hymnal, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I saw that it was, based on, Finlandia and Sibelius, which is interesting because um, it sort of sounds like a Lutheran-inspired hymn, but it didn't make it into the German hymnal in Germany. Maybe it's in there now, but it wasn't back then. So I've just fallen in love with this tune, and then realized later, where it came from. And I this piece Finlandia, which he envisioned as the last movement of the cycle of works that have to do with Finland. So it makes me think of Smetana, Ma Vlast, My Fatherland, where also Moldau is the most famous movement. And it's part of that. We have also done Ma Vlast in the past with Holland Symphony. Sort of this during this period of nationalism. But it was just so popular that Sibelius just extracted that piece from this sort of cycle of pieces that were reminiscent of his homeland, and sort of it's a standalone sort of tone poem. And I know every time I do it at the university, the low brass gets really excited, right? The tuba and the trombones have a lot to play, so they just really love this tune. But I kind of live for this quiet, hymn-like piece that emerges sort of in the middle of this piece, that the woodwinds introduce first, and then strings to it. So it's very moving, and it's because of the relationship to Russia. I think it goes well with the second half of the program with the Rachmaninoff Symphony. So yeah, I just really like this work, and I think the audience, it's very clear that it's an audience favorite.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to playing that. It's really sort of become the unofficial national anthem of Finland. Means a lot to people of Finnish descent. I can speak a little bit personally on that too. So the second number on the program is another piece that we might call loosely nationalistic music, written by German Romantic composer Max Bruch. Bruch was pretty well known in his day. Did some operatic composing. Was a violinist, teacher, conductor. Many of those things tend to go together. Is not so well known today. Really known primarily for a couple of pieces for a solo string instrument and in orchestra. So, for example, he wrote a violin concerto that is very, very standard in the violin repertoire. A wonderful piece. Holland Symphony has played it a time or two, not for quite a while, but very nicely written piece, very just wonderful romantic concerto that really every violinist plays. He wrote another violin concerto that is more overtly nationalistic in character called Scottish Fantasy, which is also a lot of fun. And Bruch, like so many other romantic composers, liked to explore different nationalities and cultures and the music and dances and folk tunes from those cultures. So this Scottish Fantasy, which we also did a really long time ago, is a wonderful sort of character piece for violin and orchestra. It almost would have fit at our last concert with all the Scottish music, but would have made the concert a little bit too long. It's quite a long work. Quite a prominent harp part, which, if you think of Celtic harps. So probably his other best known piece is this Kol Nidre for cello and orchestra. And I think he knew a cellist who was sort of envious of the works that Bruch had written for violin and orchestra, and sort of prevailed upon Bruch to write something for cello and orchestra. And Bruch was sort of searching for some source material. He was the conductor of a choir, and one of his choir members gave him the tune, this Kol Nidre tune, which is actually a Jewish tune, a liturgical tune, part of the opening part of the service of Yom Kippur, which is the culmination of the fall High Holy Days. Really a season of repentance, self-examination, fasting, thinking about what you've done wrong in the previous year, and what you want to change and amend in your life for the coming year. So it's a very penitent part of the service. So that is the tune that Bruch uses at the opening of this, and it's very much a sighing tune. Bruch takes some liberty with this tune, breaks it up into these little three-note units that sound very pleading, very repentant, very sorrowful, reflective. So that's how he starts this, and this piece is actually Bruch became so well known, or so connected to this piece, that a lot of people actually think he's a Jewish composer. He was German Lutheran as well. And then in this piece, after he visited that traditional Jewish liturgical music, then he went in some different, much more romantic sounding directions. Almost sounds a little bit like Schumann, and this sort of a major section that's much more peaceful. But a lot of Bruch's music was banned during the Nazi era in Germany because everyone thought he was Jewish because of his association to this Kol Nidre piece. So fortunately, these pieces have survived. I don't know how much of his music was lost during that time, and if that's why he's not a household name in the same way that some other German Romantic composers are. But we're glad that these few pieces have survived, and they're wonderful staples of the string repertoire. Everyone plays them at some point.
Yeah, the composers in Germany during that time, they also had to sort of decide which camp they were in, right? So there was the Liszt Wagner sort of path, and then there was the Brahms path, right, of more conservative looking back. And Bruch definitely is in the Brahms camp. So maybe that's why he didn't get as much attention as the innovators like Wagner or Liszt, who, went towards a more modern um, direction in music history. But it's really interesting. The Israel Philharmonic was just here in Orange County, and I attended their concert, and they played Kol Nidre. The orchestra plays that frequently. It's almost like a prayer piece. It bridges Western concert music and Jewish liturgical music in such a way that it really works well. And it's also not super difficult. It's accessible. So lots of younger cellists play it. And so here we have also a young cellist who is joining us, tender age of 13. But he played, I think, Cameron, I think he played his debut with the Moscow Philharmonic Orchestra at age 8, and he is at the University of Michigan pre-college. He's active there, and he takes lessons from our principal cello, Pablo, in the orchestra. So this is where the connection came from. And we would just want to help him on his career path, and we're also grateful that he's playing with us. So who knows where he's going to end up, and if we can be part of his journey towards being a professional musician, it's great to have him.
It's pretty exciting to be able to celebrate West Michigan talent. So
Yeah,
excited
absolutely.
excited to have Cameron join us and looking forward to playing this piece with him. The first two pieces on the program are fairly short, in the neighborhood of 10 minutes each, give or take a little bit, because the Rachmaninoff is not short. It's a massive symphony. It's about an hour long. Um, so Rachmaninoff is maybe some people call him sort of the culmination of the Russian Romantic movement in music. Sort of took what Tchaikovsky had done and took it another step in terms of its size and scope and orchestral colors, and how far can you push a romantic sounding melody in terms of timing and dynamic range and um, expanding the harmonies a little bit. Really, really wonderful music. So Rachmaninoff was born in the late 1800s. Was really quite a musician from an early age. Grew up in a musical family. His mother was so impressed with his talent that she hired a live-in piano instructor, um, which sounds sort of awful, but he excelled at piano. Just went to the best schools in Russia, studied with all the best people. Really was mostly known as a pianist, and really sort of had kind of recognition on the streets as a pianist. Was quite a celebrity, which I don't think he always liked. He loved to perform and play the piano, but was sort of a melancholy person and didn't like all the attention. Um, he, as a composer, he was sort of a tortured soul, and went through several periods of depression and writer's block, sought a lot of different sorts of therapy, including hypnosis, to get through some of these stretches of writer's block and depression. And one of them actually happened after his first symphony, which was a terrible disaster. It's rumored that the conductor, Alexander Glazunov, was intoxicated during the performance, but really just got horrible reviews, and the audience really criticized it. One of the reviewers said, the only people who would like this would be the inmates of hell. And that sent him into one of these just long stretches of depressed writer's block at the very end of the 1800s. And took him a while to get through that. Just during some of those times, he taught piano lessons, which he didn't like. He did some piano performing to kind of keep himself going, but didn't compose much. Actually, coming out of that, his first triumph out of that was his second piano concerto, which is probably his best known piece. And so just to make sure everyone's clear, we're doing the Second Symphony, which is not played as much as the Second Piano Concerto, probably because of its length and its difficulty. It's got a lot of notes. A lot of people are working really hard to learn all these notes. It's very colorful. It's not a huge or it's a big orchestra, but not a lot of extra instruments. So I think it calls for English horn and piccolo and bass clarinet, but not a lot of extra instruments beyond what would be in a pretty standard orchestra. Some colorful percussion, but a massive string section. We're hiring extra strings for this. We just need a really, really big string sound. So looking forward to that. I don't know maybe Johannes, what's challenging in thinking about, the overall timing of this concert maybe isn't that much longer than a standard concert, but what's challenging in terms of thinking about preparing a piece that is that long in duration?
Yeah, I know. Just one other thing, maybe about the expansiveness of the symphony. It is also sort of has the aspect of going from darkness to light, from from I guess from a suppressed mood to joy. And in that way, it's not unlike Beethoven 5 or Beethoven 9, which have that same sort of journey. And especially Beethoven 9, also being a long symphony, you have a similar trajectory. Um, I think I think what's hard about the symphony and Rachmaninoff in general, it always sounds a little easier than it is. There are some composers that sound complicated, but it actually plays well. Rachmaninoff, for some reason, you end up rehearsing things, and it's I don't know if it's not the most idiomatic writing, but I think there's just so much going on that even when you have a lush melody, there's something underneath it that is difficult. So Rachmaninoff always takes more rehearsal than you think. So as a conductor, I look at this very carefully, and also while I love this symphony, this is similar to Scottish Symphony. I waited until I felt like Holland Symphony could do this pretty well without overtaxing the players. So this is another sort of achievement for the orchestra to do the symphony, 65 minutes in length. Um, the similarity to Scottish Symphony, I would say, is that the second movement is the scherzo, right? Usually we expect the slow movement to be number two, but since the first movement, as I mentioned in Scottish Symphony, is also this sort of dark introduction, you kind of need relief, and then second movement is the scherzo, which is also very difficult. There's a lot of very challenging, fast string writing, hard for the violas also. And then the third movement is sort of the heart of the symphony, where you have this just amazingly beautiful, haunting melody that gets introduced by the clarinet, and then the orchestra joins. It's just emotionally just one of the pillars of romantic music ever written. And then the last movement looks forward and sort of has elements of joy. Now, Rachmaninoff is a composer that can make a melody in minor sound positive because he has this ability to write such dark music that even when you get a hopeful melody in minor, it still sounds positive. So it's highly reflective of perhaps, I don't know, Russian history is full of suffering, is full of people struggling. So you feel like it's nationalistic in that way too. So it's just a wonderful symphony, but emotionally taxing and also technically for the orchestra not too easy. And one other element that comes back is this Dies Irae chant, right, which comes from the Requiem Mass. Dies irae, dies illa, solve et seclum in favilla. It has sort of this that the day of reckoning is coming, and everybody shall be punished. Part of the Requiem Mass. And so it's kind of a hallmark of Rachmaninoff to use that tune in just about all of his compositions. And here it makes an entrance even in the first movement. It's sort of quoted throughout. So look for that, especially in the second movement. The brass sort of punches that really, really in your face. So yeah, there is looking back to a plain chant of a different era. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful symphony with a deep emotional journey, I would say.
Yeah, so I suppose if you're thinking about listening to this concert, um, in approaching this symphony, usually with symphonies, maybe they're 35 or 40 minutes, and you sort of get used to sitting through that. So I think, we do have listening links on the website along with the program notes. So I'd encourage you all to read the program notes on the website and listen to the pieces ahead of time. But just to be ready to embark on a different sort of a journey with this symphony, just because it's just a little bit longer. It's not only longer, I think the phrases are really long, especially in the third movement, but even in the first movement as well. So really long phrases that one phrase can take you in a lot of emotional places. Maybe just from the standpoint of a musician playing this, and Johanna said maybe it's not totally idiomatic. There are some challenging things. I think, sometimes as a string player, you try to play something that was written by a pianist. Well, pianists have all, I got to get my hands where y'all can see them, have all their notes there, and then we're trying to translate that into a slightly different way to play that. And so some of the passages that might be a little more straightforward on piano are a little bit more difficult on a string instrument because of the way we have to jump around to a lot of different strings. But another challenging thing with playing Rachmaninoff in particular is that it's like no phrase stays quite in the same timing. Everything kind of slows down and speeds up a little bit, and there's this constant sort of push and pull with the tempo of whatever we're playing. And that's one of the things that makes Rachmaninoff so special to listen to and so effective.
Yeah, I would say it maybe is the pillar of what we would call 19th century romanticism, because the romantic music that came after Rachmaninoff is looking forward more in terms of uh, pushing the envelope in terms of tonality. Then there is Richard Strauss, and it becomes more gestural. So I think this is perhaps the bloom of what we would call old-fashioned romanticism. You can't really spread it out anymore because the phrases are already so long that it's very hard to balance. But I would say, what you alluded to in him overcoming, the turmoil of the first symphony, it's also, the resilience of the human spirit and the transformation, as I mentioned, from darkness to light. So personal struggle for Rachmaninoff, but also us as we think about our lives and sort of things that have happened in the past that are darker, it sort of brings you to this culmination at the end that is entirely joyful. But it's a journey, right? It's sort of reflective of your life. It's not 10 minutes, but it takes a while. So it's intensely personal, but also I think transformative.
Mhm.
Very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Rachmaninoff was definitely sort of the successor of Tchaikovsky, and yes, like you said, sort of capped off the Russian Romantic movement.
Yeah.
Um, written in the early 1900s. Actually, not too. He had moved to Dresden by this time, to partly to escape being known on the street, and partly to escape some of the political turmoil happening in Russia. And not long after this piece was written, then the Russian Revolution happened. So that drastically changed music in Russia for a while. And Rachmaninoff at that point actually moved to the United States. So he lived out the end of his life in the United States, first in New York, and then actually he died not too far from where you are, Johannes, in Southern California. So
Yeah. I think he was even in Louisville, Kentucky, teaching piano for a while. That's kind of interesting. It didn't last very long, but yeah, he was in California. Yeah,
yeah, we don't think of Rachmaninoff as being sort of an American, but he ended his life as an American of sorts. So
right.
yes, again, so I'd encourage all of you to read the program notes online, to listen to the music. It's just wonderful stuff. It all has a lot in common, even sort of the darkness to light, the personal struggle, spaces to think and go on an emotional journey. We are looking forward to seeing everyone at the concert and pretty excited to introduce our upcoming season to you as well. We've got a lot of great things planned for next year. So thank you for watching again, and we'll see you at the end of April.
Thank you.